peace and blessings, and good evening. Welcome to another edition of King Talk Tuesdays. I'm your host, Andy King, the show with real views, real news, and real talk. We cover so many topics, whether it's economics, spirituality, education, healthcare, and so much more here on King Talk Tuesdays. We air every Tuesday live at 8 p.m. on our Facebook page, as well as our we call it YouTube channel, but we're asking everybody please to tune in, and you can always tune in to all of our previous episodes on King Talk Tuesdays on as well as File Channel 20 or 2136 as well as Ultimate Channel 7. Forgive me. It's been a long spiritual day for so many of us today, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that looked like. But you know what I always say, right? People pay attention to people who participate. So we're asking everyone to tell a friend, tell a neighbor that King Talk Tuesdays is on. King Talk Tuesdays is on, and you can send us a chat, a comment, or a thought. We want to hear from you tonight, definitely on tonight's Spirit Conversation. And you can send it in our Facebook chat or our YouTube channel. But you can also send us an email at kingtalktuesdays@gmail.com. Again, that's kingtalktuesdays@gmail.com. Again, I got to just keep reminding everybody because, as I always say, people pay attention to people who participate. So continue to keep on participating because there's so many things that are happening in the world. There's so many things happening in our neighborhood. So many things happening in our community, and we need everyone to participate. So we're going to be right back with today's episode and today's conversation right after a message from a few friends from Eastchester Jeep.
Hi, Frank Perez here from Eastchester Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram. It's our Durangos must-go inventory sell-off. Over 145 Dodge Durangos, all trims, all options, all colors, all must go. The all-wheel drive Durango has it all. Style, comfort, cutting-edge technology, and loaded with safety features. Get up to $2,750 bonus cash and even make no payments for 90 days. It's our Durangos must-go inventory sell-off. Eastchester Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram. Pay the least in the East.
Yeah, you pay the least in the East with Eastchester Jeep. But today, so many things are happening all across the world. But you know what I really just want to know? Oh, yeah, there's a whole lot of things that are happening, but I just want to know what's going on. So let's talk about what's going on. Just want to let everybody know that early voting begins October 29th, and Election Day is November 8th. That's right around the corner next week. Early voting starts, and then 2 weeks later, we're into November, and then we'll be looking to vote for, what are we voting for? We got the governor's race. We have congressional races and a few other things that are on the ballot that we're going to be discussing this evening. Secondly, we want to let you know that Boys to Men 3, for those who are there, that Boys to Men 1 and 2, well, Boys to Men 3 is sit down is back November 5th at 11 a.m. at Richard R. Green Middle School. And we want to let you know, we have a number of our young brothers out here who are just in need of guidance, a little bit of love, a little bit of wisdom. And that's what this is all about. King Talk Tuesdays is one of the supporters of organizing this, but so many brothers are coming together, from Chief Shruel Stevenson, Pastor Lamont Granby, the president of the Sigma here in the Bronx, Brother Derek Hammond is going to be there. We're looking for SUV with Pastor Jay Gooden Sr., along with not only just Stand Up to Violence, but we're talking about Guns Down Life with my good man Jimbo, and 100 Black Men is going to be in the house with Rudy Coombs and the company. But more importantly, we got the Black Space who are going in a new direction. So we're looking forward to everybody being part, along with Bishop Rosario, Bronx Clergy Task Force, and we are bringing someone in the first time to be a part of this conversation. He has a story to tell. The CEO of Easy Living Shelter, my brother Naquan Hallback. So we're looking forward to have a great spirited conversation, and not only conversation with a little bit of sounds and music to make our young people feel good. So I'm looking forward to Johnny G doing what he does as well. So look forward for that day. Men, if you want to be a part and join us, bring your son, bring a nephew, You know, our boys need to be in this room on this day at Richard Green Middle School on November 5th. You're going to hear more about it, but if you have any other questions, you can email us and RSVP at kingtalktuesdays@gmail.com. Again, that's kingtalktuesdays@gmail.com. Also, I want you to know that this month is declared as Domestic Violence Awareness Month for all the victims who have suffered, whether they're husbands, wives, children's, family. It doesn't discriminate. Violence doesn't discriminate. So we want to say to all the events that are happening around the Bronx, and there is one that is happening in the Bronx coming up this Saturday, the 22nd, over on Broadway at 236th Street. So if you know somebody who needs to get more information, get some services, get some help, please join us. We'll be putting more information up about that event coming up throughout the rest of the show as well. Also, want to let you know, as a experience cancer all around, Ambassador Real Men Wear Pink campaign. The month of October is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So again, just like violence, cancer does not discriminate, and when it tackles one person in the household, the rest of the family, the whole household has to manage it. So please do all that you can to help a cancer victim, because the life you may be saving will be your own. Fifth, we want to announce that Mayor Eric Adams has announced a new initiative to keep New York City streets cleaner. Mayor Adams and the Department of Sanitation announced the idea of a new rule that would decrease the amount of trash that is able to be left on the curb. You know, tonight's show is something that we're going to be talking about in regards to the vote that's coming up this election session. Now, I'm going to read some things in regards to this vote, because one of the things about voting, the trickery in voting, as I say, is participating. And as you start catching up to the participate, sometimes the rules change on us even more. And all the time, there's rules that's going to happen, that's going to change, and we got to figure out how to get through, how to navigate. But I always say the best voter is an educated voter. So we need to make sure we educate all our voters about what's happening and what's going on in the world today. We're right now, I believe we have one of our apostles that might be on. We wanted to bring him into the conversation. The apostle, are you there? Let's see if he's chimed in with us. Seems like he's might having some challenges with his camera. So we'll scale back to him a little later. But you know, I want to go into what's going to be happening at the polls, as our next guest that's scheduled to come on is making his way on. And tonight's guests were going to be Harold Miller, who's the executive director of the Racial Justice Commission, and Congressmember Jamal Bowman, and he'll be on later in the show. But I just want to read something to you right now, because coming up on the ballot that we'll be voting on next week, as well as in November, there's these three items that are coming up for proposal. And the first one is called the Clean Air, Clean Water, and Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act of 2022. This proposal will allow New York State to borrow $4.2 billion through a bond issuance for specific environmental related projects and policy efforts. That includes $250 million for improving stormwater systems, $200 million for water race infrastructure, and $500 million for zero emissions in our school buses, and $1.5 billion for climate mitigation, such as wetland protection and renewable energy projects. Secondly, there's going to be a statement of values for city government. This measure would create a mission statement of sorts by New York government by adding a preamble to the charter that includes a statement of values and vision. The ballot proposal says the aim is to create just and equitable city, a just and equitable city for all. Third, there's a racial equity plans that would measure and bring three new requirements to the city charter, mandating that all city agencies create racial equity plans every 2 years, establishing a new Office of Racial Equity to coordinate these racial equity plannings across the city government, and creating a commission on equity that would identify and propose priorities for racial equity planning and review the racial equity plans for city agency. And finally, there will be something called, as we talk about the cost of living in the city of New York, that this is identified what the true cost of living it truly is in the city of New York. I'm waiting for our guest to get in so we can talk a little bit more about that. But I just want to break down what I got out of it until he's able to get on. When I read these things, the first thing I know, when you're living in the city of New York, the cost of living is always different. Whether you're in parts of Manhattan, parts of Queens, the comparisons are different from parts of the North Bronx, West Bronx, South Bronx, even Staten Island, they're different. So we're going to talk about identifying a real cost of living in the city of New York. That's not a bad idea because we cannot manipulate and mislead people to think that they can live any and everywhere, but let people know what the real cost is to live certain places and why they can't be a balance, that people can't live pretty much anywhere in New York that they choose to if they can afford the economics. Well, our economics got to be greater, and it can't be about a handout, but it got to be about a hand up to help people get better, do better, and live better amongst themselves, and not making sure that cost of living in some neighborhoods are worse than others. But then we charge people like the cost of living is the same. Now, next, I wanted to talk about what they have the preamble in government and a statement of values in city government. This measure will create a mission of source of statements for New York City government. And what does that mean? You know, we have a city charter. And is there any rules of engagement of how they put this together, which I like to call a mission statement? You know, what is the mission of the city charter and the values of how laws should be created, how we should be putting rules together that allow businesses to survive and thrive. More important, allow New Yorkers to get along, letting systems not manipulate or discriminate. Well, I think a statement of value in city government, I think it's a fair thing that they're looking to do. We just want to make sure it doesn't go too far to the left and not too far to the right, but that statement stays centered to the cause, not only just to belief systems, but spiritual systems as well. You know, and one of the things that this world does loses itself, and I think sometimes take pride in, is that the spirituality that's so desperately needed in our world today has eluded us. And if we don't find our way back spiritually, it's going to be a rough and a long ride for all of us. I think right now, I think I see Apostle in the back room waiting. Apostle, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Glad you can join us tonight. Would you be so kind to offer up some words of wisdom and spirituality for tonight's show?
Thank you so much, Honorable. God bless you. My name is Apostle Ezechimerem Emonye. I'm so delighted to be in this program tonight. May God bless you. I just want to let us know that there is no coincidence in the things of God. Whatsoever that is going on, God is aware of it, especially among our youth. Today, in the world, everybody knows that the youth are the target, even for development. They are the people who have the power, who God has deposited the power, the privilege, the authority to develop everywhere. Any place they go, they have the authority of God. They have the mandate of God to bring in development. And I want to let them know that because of that, even the enemy knows the power and privilege God has bestowed on the youth, and that is the reason why the enemy is fighting the youth. The lion that came to attack the flocks of David did not come for David. They came for those so that David will not have a harvest. And that's the youth. The enemy do not want the youth to have a harvest. The enemy do not want the youth to have what they can show as what they have done, as a product, as a proceed, as an achievement. That is why the enemy is against the youth. Look at what's going on in the schools. You see shootings everywhere. You see all kinds of things that the enemy is doing especially in the schools, against the youth, so that they will not grow up to become something. But thank God for Jesus Christ. God said, I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly. I am speaking to our youth today. I want to let them know that the power of God upon their lives will not allow the enemy to prevail. The grace of God upon their lives will not allow the enemy to prevail in all circumstances. God is on the throne, and because he's on the throne, the youth shall excel. And this program that has something to do with the youth shall excel beyond imagination. God will carry this program to the highest top, that everybody will know that God is with this program. God said to David, I picked you from following the sheep. I am speaking to the youth. You will not follow the sheep. Rather, the sheep will follow you because the sheep needs direction. You don't need direction. It is the sheep that needs direction. So you will never follow the sheep. God will give you the direction so that the sheep will follow you because it is the sheep that needs direction. I am praying that the Almighty God will give us the power and the privilege, the authority, will give us the grace to know him even the more, so that God's own divine GPS will be in our lives. And I know it is coming to manifest in the most powerful name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Apostle, thank you for that prayer. We really appreciate our young people need it in a time and era that people's lives are just running upside down and flipped upside down. So I truly thank you. We thank you for your words this evening. So God bless you. Stay in the back room because our guest is here. And I know you said you had a few questions when we spoke offline about elections and being smart and understanding. So we're going to jump right into that conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest has arrived. We want to talk about it, what I just read off for you earlier in regards to what's getting ready to happen in this election session this season. Early voting again starts next week on the 29th. November 8th is the general election. And on after you vote for the governor, the Congress, there is on the back of the ballot, there is a couple items that you need to know about so you can be an educated voter to vote about it. The gentleman who's going to break it down for us and explain to us what it actually is and what it means is joining us here for the first time for King Talk Tuesday. I welcome him. I got the chance to meet him at City Hall. He's a smart brother, good man, the executive director of the Racial Justice Commission. Brother Harold Miller, join us today, good brother. How you doing?
Mr. King, how are you?
Doing good. Glad you can join us. I know your schedule is crazy, but I'm glad
I apologize, for the late arrival, but it was important for me to be here this evening, and I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So before you got on, I had the opportunity to read a little bit about the ballot items that are going to be on for our viewers to understand. So I'd just like for you to talk a little bit about what is the New York City's Racial Justice Commission and what is it that you're responsible for delivering?
Thank you. So the New York City Racial Justice Commission is a charter revision commission that is focused on addressing structural racism in our city and come up with proposals that will begin to dismantle, and I keyword begin to dismantle structural racism, because we know we're not going to solve racism with a handful of ballot questions in a 2-year period. But what it will do, if passed, it will begin to start to break the roots of structural racism that exists in our city. And so these ballot measures were developed during a process where our commissioners, went around the city, met with New Yorkers, had a series of public input sessions, spoke with experts in various disciplines like healthcare, housing, early childhood education, and realized that the issues around racial equity was so broad that you had to really take a really deep look into like what are the structural inequities that exist. And so they developed 3 ballot measures that will tackle the root causes of structural racism that we see in our city. So, the first question talks about a statement of values. It's like, what kind of city we want to be, what kind of city that we strive to live in, where everyone lives with dignity, everyone has the availability of access, opportunity, and power to influence government. Question 2 talks about actions that take place to make number 1 a reality. Formation of a racial equity office. So racial equity is at the heart of city government. Right now, a lot of decisions are not made with race implied. A racial equity planning process for every city agency is to ensure that every city agency has the responsibility to address some racial equity. And then and the third part of question 2, a commission, to make sure that a commission is established to hold our city accountable to the actions of racial equity. Making sure that they review the plans, holding administrations to come accountable to ensure that racial equity will be at the heart of city government. And then when we get to the third ballot question, which will be the fourth one on your ballot, because the first question is an Environmental Justice Act question. And so these questions I'm talking about are question 2, 3, and 4. So the fourth question will be the true cost of living measure, to actually create a real cost of living measure that factors in what it would really cost to live here in New York City in 2023. And not including public assistance, private benefits, or any informal assistance. So you actually get a real accurate number of how much it costs to, raise a family, live here in New York City at this point in time. And a lot of people be totally amazed that, the federal poverty measure is about $27,000 for a family of 4. Because it only factors in how much food you need to eat in a day, and it factors out over a year. And we know we don't live on bread alone. We need housing, we need childcare. You need to afford to be able to take the subway to work. And so a true cost of living, if passed, would have that factor in. And so we can actually know what it will cost to live here with real dignity. And then if we're falling short on New Yorkers, it'll be up to the responsibility of the city to look at ways of developing policy and programs to make sure that more New Yorkers are moving into that level of dignity that we talked about in question 1. We want all New Yorkers to live with dignity. This will measure whether or not we're there, and then inform the city how we get there. And question 2 is the actions that we take to get to that aspiring city that we want to live in.
Thank you. So 1 or 2 questions came in, and you said it, you broke it down. We might need you to break it down a little bit more, and some
Sure.
people are asking opinions and so forth. Because when we go back to question 1, creating this preamble for the New York City Charter, why do we think right now that a preamble is needed in 2023 or 2022?
Well, a preamble is the introductory statement. It is what sets the tone. And it's kind of interesting, for New York City has existed for almost 500 years at this point.
Mm.
And we actually don't have a mission statement. We kind of just been existing. I mean, look, we are the mightiest city perhaps ever on earth, in human history.
Right.
And I'm a proud New Yorker. I love the fact that I'm born and raised in the city, but it's also very troubling that, for all our might and for all our, the great things we're known for, we don't actually have a statement that kind of centers about who we are. And that's a surprise when I bring that up to New Yorkers. Like, you need a mission statement in order to be an effective organization, to have an effective body. You need something that will guide who you are. And so this preamble is to guide who we are. What it also does, and I didn't mention this in the beginning, it also acknowledges past harms that racism has caused on our city. it talks about the stolen land from the Lenape people. It talks about African people brought against their will in enslavement. It talks about generations of immigrants coming into the city, being marginalized and discriminated against. All are there to acknowledge the fact that, like, in order for us to move forward, in order for us to actually be a city that is aspiring for all New Yorkers, you have to acknowledge the harms that was caused in order to begin the healing process. And so this preamble serves as an aspirational outlook of what kind of city we should strive to be, but also at the same time acknowledges the truths of what racism has done to our city and the harm that it caused to those populations.
Well, with the preamble and the mission statement, would it force, I would say, government to repeal some of these laws or rules or policies, or just continue to add on in the system of rules and laws and that have been voted in on that are aimed to negate? But as I understand, in government, being in government, sometimes if you just don't wipe it out altogether, adding something else on top of it with the goal of diminishing it does only that, just diminish it, but it doesn't erase it.
Well, what it does, it sets these value standards, so we as a people can hold our elected officials, our our government accountable to saying, are you following that? And I don't want to make any set any unreasonable expectations that government will always get it right with a value statement document. What it does do, it kind of sets that tone for New Yorkers to be able to address what kind of when a decision comes down, is like, does that fit into our values? We can have that debate. Right now decisions are made every day, but are we really unified around, like, what kind of city we want to live in? And so this starts to help develop that, what kind of city we really want to be.
Right. And I guess that also, would that have an impact on not only what kind of city do we want to be? What do you think it would have an impact on how those individuals that are saying that they want to be part of the city system to lead, or be a part of building it, that if they can't be part of this, follow the mission statement of the city, then maybe they not worthy of being in those positions? Does it set that kind of tone as well?
It does. It's intended to give a vision of where we want to be. And I don't want to say we'll get there right away, but that's why I say it's aspiring. We should aspire to be a city that is open and available and inclusive for all New Yorkers. Be a city that values a quality education, make sure that healthcare is a priority for all New Yorkers, and a clean environment. People should feel safe, and I don't just mean like more police, but like we should have real safety. So that those are the things we talk about in this preamble. That New York should be a place that everyone should feel like they should be able to have access, opportunity, and power.
I like that. Equity and a little bit of power.
Well, you can't have power without equity, and can't have equity without power. So it goes hand in hand.
Right. You mentioned, and I applaud y'all, because yes, New York, we talk about hundreds of years, didn't just get here in 10 days. The issues that we have of the day are cumulative. So yes, I thank y'all for trying to tackle it, to set the clock back, help people really understand that there's been some violations of the people itself, and how do we correct them with. Let's start the conversation and put it on. Hey, this is the new S on our chest. So I thank you for that. You mentioned when we started talking about equity, cost of living. how are we going to map it out after we do understand the cost of living? Because you're a New Yorker
Hmm.
and I'm a New Yorker,
Yep.
and there's certain things that as a New Yorker that the cost of living is flawed.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like do we need a study to tell us something that we may already know? So when you talk about these cost of livings, how do you plan on identifying and rolling out so people get a clear understanding once you collect this data?
Well, a great question. So the true cost of living measure, we gave some ideas of what what they should factor in the cost, but ultimately it'll be the administrations to come that will, develop kind of the formula. We want to make sure it's flexible because, the needs of 2023 is not the same, may not be the same in 2032. You think about it, when I was growing up in, in the 90s, I didn't get internet until I was a teenager, because internet wasn't something that was a necessity for my development, but it's a necessity for my kids. And so we have to
Mm,
factor that cost in,
right.
because, the demands of the day require that. And so, so I just want to kind of, just give perspective, like, you wanna have measures that be able to evolve with time, and so it's not so prescriptive in that where you're stuck and you have to go back and change it
Mhm.
over and over again.
Okay. Listen,
Um,
I want you to hold on for a minute for me, Harold. We are technically at halftime of King Talk Tuesdays, the show with real views, real news, and real talk. We air every Tuesday at 8 p.m. live on Facebook and our YouTube channel. We air every Thursday as well as 10:30 on FiOS channel 2136 and Optimal channel 70. Now, some of you are tuning in right now and leaving your comments. But if you have more comments, please leave something on our chat on Facebook as well as our YouTube channel. And you can also send us an email at kingtalktuesdays@gmail.com. That's kingtalktuesdays@gmail.com. But me, as a former basketball, I always get my stretch on, get my jump on, make sure I'm okay. So I'm going to take a quick break and we'll be right back after a few messages from our friends.
Hi, Frank Perez here from Eastchester Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram. It's our Durango's must-go inventory sell-off. Over 145 Dodge Durangos, all trims, all options, all colors, all must go. The all-wheel drive Durango has it all. Style, comfort, cutting-edge technology, and loaded with safety features. Get up to $2,750 bonus cash and even make no payments for 90 days. It's our Durango's must-go inventory sell-off. Eastchester Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram. Pay the least in the East.
Welcome to Therodynamics, where we get you back to life. We offer physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. We accept all major insurances. Don't worry about an appointment. At Therodynamics, walk-ins are accepted. We have locations in the Bronx, Manhattan, Queens, and New Jersey. Our therapists, combined with our cutting-edge technology, will get you back to life. Visit our website at www.therodynamics.com for locations, services, and more.
Well, welcome back to King Talk Tuesdays. We are here, the show with real views, real news, real talk with the great Harold Miller, who's heads up the New York City's Racial Justice Commission. And we're talking about the ballot items that we all have to vote on coming up on the 29th, as well as throughout this early voting process, which ends on November 6th. And then on General Election Day on the 8th, whether you vote, whoever you vote for governor, just go out and vote. Whoever you vote for Congress, go out and vote. Who you voting for Senate, Congress, just go out and vote. And Harold knows it better than most that you got to vote on everything and understand that your politics are local. So you got to be engaged. And when we talk about being engaged, we're talking about sometimes there are ballot items that come on and you turn over the ballot or you don't turn over the ballot. And then you get home and people start talking about, did you check out 1, 2, or 3? And you're like, but Harold's here to tell us talk to us a little about how is the commission right now getting ready to go out and educate people, let people know that these ballot items exist and they got to pay attention to them.
Well, for example, using your great platform to talk about it is one of the many different ways we are getting the word out to all New Yorkers. Most of our engagement has been on the ground, grassroots organizing. working with community-based organizations, myself going out to many different local presentations and meetings and churches and how the houses of worship. We're working through media as well. Again, again, press interviews. Our commissioners are, making the circuit. Talking to all local and community newspapers, ethnic newspapers, as well as doing TV, podcasts, radio interviews. And you're starting to see advertisements, billboards, posters around your laundromat, billboards on the highway, subway ads. And then you'll see TV and radio ads as well. And we want to thank the Adams administration for giving us the resources to do all this outreach, because we feel that it's so important to educate all New Yorkers around these ballot questions. We don't want to leave it up to chance that whether the ballot questions are voted up or down, that it's really a consensus of what New Yorkers want at this point in time. So it's very critical for us to have as a robust engagement as possible, encourage New Yorkers to go out and learn about these ballot measures and make a choice, make an informed decision based on your values, based on what is best for the city, in your opinion.
Now, I love that answer. And it was a very middle of the road answer, which I loved. But I have to ask the question now. So, every time there's these ballot items, and you get people on the one side of the road and others on the other side of the road, and you get money pushed in to push these things, these amendments to the charter, and some people say you shouldn't do it. So talk to us a little about, is there a benefit in these three charters? Is there going to be any other groups on the other side saying, no, we want to keep everything the same? What's been the feel out there when you've been doing this work?
Well, I mean, just to be objective here, a lot of the conversations I had with New Yorkers have been very positive. And New Yorkers ask really tough questions. They're like, okay, will this actually work? Will it end racism? And I'm honest. I said, it's not going to end racism right now. It's hard to undo 400 years of oppression. It's hard to undo what was done to particularly Black people when it comes to slavery. It's hard to undo taking of a people's land, of like the indigenous Lenape. It's hard to undo in 3 ballot questions in a 2-year period. But what it does do, it begins to center government around racial equity. And so it changes the conversation. And the idea is that, it will be up to New Yorkers to ensure that these ballot measures, if passed, are actually enacted. There'll be naysayers who think as soon as they see the word race, they think we're going to take something away from their community. And that's not the case. They're going to think we're going to sue the city for every little thing that that's not fulfilled in these 3 ballot questions. That's not the case. It's going, they say, well, you ain't speaking specifically about Black people. That's not the case. It's about Black people. It's about Latino. It's about Asian. It's about the indigenous people who are here. It's about, those of Middle Eastern descent. It's about all of us who identify as persons of color. And the common thread is that we do not have full rights, access, opportunity, and power in the city. And so what these ballot measures do is begin to repair that, begin to close the gap on that gap that I just mentioned. And it doesn't, at the same time, no intentions of taking anything away from those who think they have power or may have power, already. That is not the case.
I'm glad you said it is not the case, but I'd like to ask you a question that came in about what is the case. And they're asking the question, if we're talking about equality, equity, does that mean that some people go up on the ladder while some people come down on the ladder, or does some people go 3 steps up the ladder to catch up to the people who's on the ladder so we can be equal?
Well, I think your analogy is actually spot on. Just imagine we have, ladders, and we're all trying to get to a certain place. One perspective is that, okay, everyone take 3 steps up. That's what they call equality. But the problem is a lot of folks started 5 miles back.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so equity is about making sure you acknowledge the 5 miles that was deprived of a people, so they can actually get to the ladder, so they could climb those 3 steps with everyone else. And even a better point someone pointed out to me is removing the ladders altogether, and that we all, don't have barriers that prohibits us to climb up to something, but we all are able to share and achieve something all together. That's what true equity is about. But I think we have to be very intentional about the fact that, like, not all New Yorkers are the same. Not just because we may have a college education, we have live successful lives in the city, we're still Black. And so what that means is that I get deadly afraid when a police officer pulls me over, because he doesn't know I have a college degree. He doesn't know I was a former deputy commissioner in the city of New York. He doesn't know that I am an executive director of a charter revision commission, which is, a mind-blowing experience in itself, because to him, I'm a Black man. And when you're dealing with those structural inequities of how you're perceived, how you're looked at, just solely because, your color, your skin, the accent on your voice, the neighborhood you grew up in, structural racism is alive and well. And so it takes a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of work for us to dismantle that and to break those barriers, in the many years to come.
I'm glad you just mentioned the structural racism part of all of this. One of the questions just came in regards to one of the battle items when we're talking about the commission, to make sure there is some type of equity, equality in city agencies. And they're asking, because they did read it, but they missed your explanation. So they're trying to understand, will all the agencies be equitable? Will people get fired if they discriminate, or if they create up any policies? Or will agencies hold each other accountable? If you violate something and you're causing me to be at a place that I look like I'm being violated, they're asking that question.
No, good questions. I will say this. Every agency will be required to come up with racial equity plans. They need to all come up with an indicator to show how they're making progress around dismantling or eliminating structural barriers around, in racism, and becoming more equitable. We may not see all the results and all the outcomes right away, but that's why it's a 2-year plan, and so we want to see some beginnings of it, some forward movement, and it could take many different forms. Each agency is unique in the way they deliver services, the way they bring forth services to our communities. And so it's important that each agency will be treated as such differently and have and held to standards, but they all will be held accountable to moving the ball forward around greater racial equity in our city.
Well, I thank you for bringing greater equity and equitability in our city. At this point in time, we would have taken a break, but we have another guest who wants to join in and chime into what you've been talking about and talk about what he's doing. I want to welcome my good brother, the Honorable Congress member Jamal Bowman. Welcome to King Talk Tuesday, Congressman. How you doing, big man?
I am well, brother. How are you, man? Good to be with you, brothers, man. How's everything?
Making it happen. And Harold's explaining everything to us to make sure that we get out and vote. Because matter of fact, I think you got an election coming up on November 8th. They vote for you, right?
Absolutely. So November 8th is election day. I believe early voting starts October 29th. I do have a Republican component. This is a vast majority Democratic district, but we don't take anything for granted. So please, people, get out there and vote to help me get back to Congress and vote to get the people you want into office. And after we get in office, hold us accountable, because people pay attention to people who participate. And if you ain't holding us accountable, then we ain't gonna get done what we supposed to get done. So vote us in, hold us accountable.
Oh, I love it, love it. So Harold was talking about some of the ballot lines that people have to vote on, and one of the things that the New York Charter was about a preamble. Now, I don't know if the Constitution. Well, yeah, the Constitution does have
Does
one.
have yes, we the
Have
people.
one. And keeps hold y'all in Washington. So, as a congressman, how valuable do you think a preamble is to any type of charter or how a government functions?
Well, the preamble is the vision, man. The preamble paints the picture of what this document that is proceeding is supposed to do. So for me, I love the preamble of the Constitution because it talks about the things like the general welfare of the people of our country. And for me, I always go back to that, because if we're not providing affordable housing, if we're not providing a living wage, if we're not providing health care, if we're not fully funding our schools, if we're not dealing with the issue of lack of green space and climate change and mental health, then we are in violation of the preamble. And oftentimes people go to the policies, right, that follow and skip the preamble. But if we're in violation of the preamble, then we got to start all over and figure out what the heck we're doing and how the heck we're supposed to get to the place that we're trying to get to in the current context and circumstances that we're in. So the preamble is everything. I mean, when I, founded CASA in 2009 and I wrote the proposal for the school, we started with mission and vision, right? You can't, any organization, any office, any institution has to start with mission and vision. And that's what the preamble is. It's the mission and vision, and then everything else flows from that.
I love it. Mission and vision. Now, our brother Harold was just discussing about the mission of agencies holding each other accountable. We discussed a little bit about changing. Will these missions, when there's an elected leader in office, they create legislation kind of to supersede a prior fault in another piece of legislation? The question I must ask you as a legislator: do we think that those methods work, or do we have to go into total removal, repeal of some of these laws that have, and policies that have hurt specifically people of color? Call it for what it is.
Well, it depends on the legislation, right? Some legislation needs to have wholesale change attached to it, depending on what the issue is. Other legislation requires a tweak here or a tweak there. For example, we're going to be introducing a piece of legislation to revise a federal policy related to education and standardized testing. Right now, standardized testing is given every year in public schools in grades 3 through 8. But what the research shows is that approach to teaching and learning doesn't lead to the outcomes that we want. So our bill is looking to move from annual standardized testing towards more matrix sampling or grade span testing, where you would test maybe in 4th grade and 7th grade to get a snapshot of where kids are, and then you bring the resources in to provide support. So it depends on the legislation. But the brother, as he spoke about equity, that really resonated for me. Because when you look throughout American history, and you know this, Brother King, when you look throughout American history, a lot of our legislation hasn't been equitable. So it benefits certain groups and communities over others. And to your point, Black and Latino communities have been left behind historically. So, when you take a transformative piece of legislation like the New Deal, that was passed shortly thereafter the Great Depression and World War II, that New Deal provided home ownership opportunities to Americans across the country at low interest rates, at low cost. 92% of those home loans went to white people. And what happened to Black people who couldn't move out of public housing into home ownership to build wealth for their districts? Those communities were redlined and devalued simply because they were Black. So when we talk about, and I know you didn't ask about this, but I want to say this word and bring it up right now. When we talk about repairing the harm of the past or reparations, that often requires new policy to deal with the harms that have been caused from an old policy.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman. And I'm glad you went through that because Harold, I was going to take you there.
Go there.
I was going to take you there. How does your organization, your commission, recognize, and as you talked about in the preamble, as you discussed, the violations of land being taken, lives being taken from this country when it came to Black and quote unquote indigenous folks here? How does that reparations conversation make its way into the room?
Well, that's a great question. And, it was something that was heavily discussed amongst commission members last year about whether or not you propose a reparation process. And so if you go on our website, nyc.gov/racial justice, if you look beyond the ballot, one of the first things that we said that the city needs to take a look at beyond these 3 ballot measures is a process to address past harms and a reconciliation process, a reparation process, because in order for us to really move forward as a city, we do need to have a process of healing and repair and reparations. I believe that wholeheartedly, and our commission definitely believes that as well. But what we did not want to do was to work within the charter framework and shortchange ourselves and come up with something that's haphazard and not fully, fleshed out, not fully thought of and thorough that this process will require. But it's critical to continue to move the ball forward, that there is a reparation process that needs to be taken in our municipality and in all other municipalities around the country, and really on the federal level as well.
Can I jump in, Brother King?
Please do.
That's okay. So if you take Edenwald, for example, Edenwald Projects hasn't received a dime in federal funding in over a decade. And it's been systematically divested from over the last 30 years. Public housing. They're trying to take away public housing. So what happens? When you need repairs, you don't get repairs. When you need the trash taken out accordingly, the trash isn't taken out accordingly. When the trash isn't taken out, what do you have? You have roach and rodent infestation. When paint is chipping in your homes, and because this public housing was built so long ago, we have lead paint in the walls that our children, our families are inhaling. And then when they go to school and they have a learning disability, we're not connecting it back to the lead paint. So reparations or repairing that harm would be historic investments in affordable housing. President Biden's legislation, Build Back Better, had historic investments of $350 billion in affordable housing, which could have dealt with this issue very directly. Unfortunately, many of my colleagues in Congress did not support this, and that's why it didn't pass. And what's even more frustrating is there were Democrats who didn't support this aspect of the legislation, and we're supposed to be the big tent that supports the least among us. So Edenwald, I will listen. While I'm in office, I'm gonna do everything in my power to bring in the billions of dollars that Edenwald should have been getting over the last several decades, so that the kids and the families who grow up there can grow up with dignity and pride and self-determination. Because when you're neglected, you lose that self-determination as a person, as a people. And that's why we see the rise in crime in certain areas of our communities as well.
Well, you definitely hit it on the head, Congressman. Thank you, because people forget, and I'll never forget, as in the council where NYCHA kept asking the city for the $25 million that was needed. They kept asking, forgetting that NYCHA was originally federally organized and funded and created. And I kept saying, I said, why y'all keep coming to us? Y'all should be, and this is before you got there, y'all should be going to Congress and the federal government, because they're the ones that pulled the money out. The city never had the money to put it in. Yeah, and no one had that conversation. So thank you for saving Edenwald, because and Gun Hill needs a saving. Baychester already privatized Baychester and moved it out of under quote unquote the funding stream of NYCHA, even though NYCHA still oversees it. They have private management there. But you hit so many points that all these dots are connected, and we're hoping that the Racial Justice Commission, these conversations allow people to wake up. And yes, some people will be offended, but you know what? You can't talk to people who have been offended and oppressed for 100 years about you being offended right now when you've been profiting from life. You know, so that's the unfair conversation. So I hope in the racial justice, when agencies are putting together and people want to be in position, there are people who are like-minded who say we got to move this agenda that's going to help the people who have been hurt and beat down over decades and centuries, and not worrying about offending the people who are still living privilege.
And you know what I hear from constituents and neighbors in the district, Brother King, they're not against us giving 50, 80, 100 billion to Ukraine, but they're like, where's my 50, 80, and 100 billion? And I'm right here in this country, and you haven't invested in my housing, my education, my jobs program, my environment, but they're under attack and they're in war. So, and we want to support them. Okay, fine. But what about us?
Yeah.
Like we live here. We go to work every day. And I haven't seen those kind of investments in our communities.
Hey, matter of fact, your tax money just went to Ukraine.
100%.
Exactly. I know you have limited time, and matter of fact, we're almost wrapping up here. But both of you, I just want to give y'all a minute or two to say some parting words. I want to start with you, Congress member, because I know you have a race that you're engaged in right now while you're still educating people to get out and vote. So talk to us.
So yeah, real quick, just yes, I'm in a general election, so please make sure you come out and vote. And I would love to earn your vote in the general to go back to Congress to continue the good work we're doing. But like I said before, it's about accountability. So don't just vote me in. Call my office, write my office, email my office, come to my office, and hold me accountable to what you need done in your community. And the last thing is this: hold all elected officials accountable. Because guess what? They always tell us we ain't got the money, we can't do this, we can't do that. Okay? If we could put a man on the moon, if Jeff Bezos could build rocket ships and travel out of space, if we could fund other countries in their wars, we could do everything we want in this country. So push us to push harder in our elected spaces. And thank you, brothers. It's so great to be with you. And I'll see you all in the community for sure.
All right.
Thank you, Congressman.
Good to see you, Congressman. Oh, we'll see you next week at the Boys to Men, though. You're going to drop through and give some words.
That's right. Send me
the info, to the Boys to Men.
Sure.
All right. Harold, you get the last word.
Well, just thank you for the platform tonight. Remember, flip your ballot, don't miss it. Flip it, don't miss it. There are questions around racial equity on the ballot. It's important that New York City makes an informed decision about what direction we want to go in when it comes to racial equity, and that decision is up to you, New Yorkers. And so please tell a neighbor, tell a friend, tell family members about the ballot measures. Go on to nyc.gov/racial justice, learn more, read about it. It's we made it as plain as possible so New Yorkers can learn about it. And if you need to read it in different languages, you can have it translated on the website as well. So we just want to make sure you are informed and that you go in with a clear understanding on how you need to go vote on November 8th, or if you do an early vote starting October 29th. But flip it, don't miss it.
I like it. Flip it and don't miss it. Brother Harold, it's a delight and a pleasure. Thank you again for joining us this evening on King Talk Tuesdays. And as we always end King Talk Tuesdays, we end it with the scripture. And tonight's scripture reads from Proverbs chapter 4, verses 20 to 22. My son, attend to my words, incline thy ear unto my sayings. Let them not depart from thy eyes, keep them in the midst of thy heart, for they are the life unto those that find them, and health to all their flesh. If no one told you today, God loves you, and so do I. Your friend, your brother, and your neighbor, Andy King. Peace.